Welcome to Your Career Story Podcast, a show that's designed for rockstar professionals looking for that extra booster shot of confidence in their careers. Whether you're trying to get clarity on a job transition, want some work-life balance inspiration, or need a strategy to snag that promotion or raise, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Jenna Viviano, ex-Wall Streeter turned startup junkie who now coaches hundreds of clients, empowering them to take back control of the job search and land their dream job. So sit back, grab a glass of wine, and prepare yourself for your weekly boost of career confidence. Lauren, I am so excited to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be asked.
Yeah. And we met at a really random function.
Yes. At the Able branding event that you did.
I love Able. And I love that we got to chat afterwards and you started talking to me about Enneagram. And I think at that moment I had said to you, I'm going to be launching a podcast eventually. I'd love to have you on.
Yes.
And fast forward a long time since that was many, many months ago and we're finally making it happen. But I'm just so thrilled to have you on and talk to you a little bit about the work that you've been doing and kind of where you got to. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Okay. I'm Lauren Gray. I am an Enneagram teacher and coach. I also am a mom and I teach 2 days a week music education at a private school. So my big career trajectory was I taught music in the public school system for 6 years. And then I really felt like I needed to come home with my kids, which is something that I never thought that I would do. But all of a sudden, God just kind of dropped that in my heart.
Yeah. Why did you think you weren't going to do it?
I don't know. I mean, I think my mom always worked and I thought that was great. And I just kind of thought I'm going to do both really, really well.
Yeah.
And you're and I definitely think people can. But at that point, I think God was just kind of shifting something in me, which was really a difficult thing to do because I loved my job, but has been really rewarding. So now that my kids are older, I'm kind of getting back out into the working world. And it's just been really great, to talk to adults during the day, which is super fun. But this is the Enneagram and being able to work with people has really just reignited for me my passion for coaching and seeing how people can really become the best that they can be.
Yeah. So how did you make the leap from, music teacher? First of all, I was hugely impacted by all of my music teachers growing up. So thank you for the work that you've done. That's huge, such a huge part of that. So how did that jump happen? How did you get interested in Enneagram? And why don't you just explain to us a little bit about what it is?
Okay. So I got interested in the Enneagram just because you're probably the same way. I'm like a personality test junkie. And so it's like, if I come across anything, I'm like, ooh, let me take this test and learn about myself. So I had done that. And so I knew what my number was. I hadn't really delved very deep into it. And then there was this relationship that I had that was just kind of weird. And I couldn't really put my finger on what was going on. And they just kind of offhandedly mentioned, oh, I'm this number on the Enneagram. And so I looked it up and I was like, oh, what's a relationship of this number and this number? And I went, oh, this is the problem. This explains everything that has been happening. And so it was really helpful because I was able to learn, like, this isn't just this person, trying to be a jerk. It was, this is how they view the world. This is how I view the world. And when people aren't on the same page and don't understand that about each other, you can really have some problems. And so that kind of sent me down the rabbit hole of researching. And then I had my husband take the test and we started talking about, how we actually are the same number, which is real interesting.
Interesting. Okay. You're both threes. You told me you were a three before this. We're going to go through all the different numbers, but you're a three. Okay.
We're both threes, the achiever. And so even just knowing that in our relationship has helped so much. So after harassing my friends to take the test and, learn about it.
I've done the same thing. It is totally fine.
Yes. My husband finally was like, why don't you really think about actually becoming certified and actually doing this for real? And I said, that would be great. Because I've always loved teaching.
Right.
And I think the thing that I love about my job in schools, because I've always done, middle school and high school choir, it's the coaching aspect of that I enjoy so much. And I was able to kind of put that together and go, oh, well, if this is what I enjoy and this thing that I'm passionate about, I could actually really do this. Yeah. So that's kind of what brought me here.
Okay, so talk to us a little bit about the Enneagram is obviously a personality test. We've talked about it because I actually have all of my clients take it, and most of them don't know about it. So it is I feel like it's a Southern thing. Is it a Southern thing?
I don't know if it's a Southern thing. I think it's
very Nashvilleian.
Yes, it is for sure a Nashville thing. Here's kind of the brief history of it. It's got very ancient roots. And then in the 70s, people actually started writing things down. So before then, it was all oral tradition. Nothing was written. And then in the 70s, they actually started writing these things down. People started studying them. Psychologists started kind of getting into the mix. It was really in a spiritual practice before. And then when psychology kind of started coming in is when things really got clinical and started coming out to the masses and being used more. So I think that's why it's kind of having a resurgence now, is because we actually have things that are written down that we can reference, and it's not just word of mouth anymore.
Okay. Yeah. Because a lot of, again, my Northern friends, I moved from from New York to Nashville, and I always talk to what's your Enneagram? Have you heard this about Enneagram? None of them know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
But all of my Southern friends know. So I was just curious. That makes a lot more sense. So let's say I'm interested in knowing, people are like, what is this Enneagram thing? So you take the Enneagram test, and then what happens?
So it is a personality typing system that has 9 types. And actually, a lot of teachers recommend, and I agree with this to a degree, to not take a test and to just read about the different types. Because a lot of the times the test will test for the behavior, but the Enneagram is more concerned about the motivation for the behavior. So I would consider myself a perfectionist, which is what a different number actually is. But the reason why I'm doing it is what makes me my number. So a lot of the behaviors can be the same. And so it's just a really great tool for self-awareness. So I would say if you want to find a test online, that's great. And usually they will give you you're probably this number, but if you don't think you're that, then check out this one or this one. They usually give you a couple of options. So I think it's good to narrow it down, but don't just take a test and go, oh, I know what I am. You want to go back and read. So The Road Back to You by Ian Cron and Suzanne Stabile is a great book just to kind of get a very basic level of, here are the 9 types, here is what they look like. And then you should be able to pinpoint yourself by reading there. Or you can go on the Enneagram Institute website, and there are descriptions of each of the types there. So that's what I did. I think I took a test and then went to the Enneagram Institute and just read about it and went, oh yeah, that's me. And a lot of the times, another thing about the Enneagram that is different from other personality typing systems is that it gives you the really positive things about your type, but it also tells you the really negative things about your type.
So I read them sometimes and I'm like, oh.
Yes. So typically I say when you're reading through the different types, whatever makes you the most embarrassed probably is your type. So if you're humiliated as you're reading, you're like, oh, this may be me. Because I think a lot of times people can relate to the negative side more than they can to the positive side of their personality.
Yeah. So why don't you walk, it's actually funny you say that. I was doing it with a friend of mine, and she was reading it and she was like, that's awful about me. If that's true about me, that's awful about me.
Yes.
So I'm like, don't shame yourself about it. Like, I got a bunch of bad stuff about my type too, so it's okay.
Right. Exactly.
Why don't you walk us through what the 9 different types are?
Okay. And I'm going to use a little bit different terminology than people who might be familiar already have used. My teacher, you kind of use the terminology that the teacher teaches you. So
Sure.
My teacher uses a little bit different terminology, but I'll also tell you what the other people call it so you can kind of relate it.
Okay.
So we'll start. They're all numbered. They're 1 through 9, and it's definitely not a ranking. They're not better or worse. This is just how they're classified.
Mm-hmm.
So number 1 is the good person. So sometimes this is also called the perfectionist or the reformer. And they are very principled and conscientious. And their main deal is, I'm going to do what's right because that is what is morally right. So they are able to see the problems in the world and want to fix them.
Okay.
Number 2 is the loving person. This is also sometimes called the helper.
Okay.
And they are very nurturing and giving and serving. So they are the ones who see a need and they want to be the ones to meet it because that's how they show love.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3, this is us, is the effective person. Now, I appreciate the terminology that my teacher used for us better than performer or achiever, which is what they call it sometimes. Because when I hear performer, I'm like, well, I don't know about that. Like, yes, I want to do well, but I really like effective person because I'm like, yes, that's what I want to be, is effective.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So they are competent, they are confident, and they can also be competitive. So we are really into productivity, efficiency, and doing your job well.
Yes, it's so funny.
Do you feel that way?
100%. I remember because I thought similarly that I was that I was a perfectionist.
Right,
I always
me
thought
too.
that was more the behavior, though. You're absolutely right. And I remember reading it, and I was like, oh, it's kind of like in Harry Potter where they have the sorting hat, and it like barely touches the kid's head, and it screams Slytherin. It's like the same idea with me, screaming like a 3. It's like, oh, she's a 3. Oh, she's a 3.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, I get it. I totally get it. So number 4 is the original person. Sometimes this is called the romantic or the individualist.
Mm-hmm.
And these are really creative and feeling people, and they want to be unique. They want to feel special in the world. And what's really cool about them is they're able to kind of find the beauty in the mundane that the rest of us are missing. Because they are so creative and they've got that eye. Mm-hmm. Number 5, type 5, is the wise person. This is sometimes called the observer or the investigator. And they are very scholarly, they're observant and logical. So they're in their heads, they can objectively analyze and synthesize and integrate different points of view for all of us. So they're researching and really thinking things through.
I gotcha.
Number 6 is the loyal person. Sometimes it's called the loyalist because they are just, that's just what they are. They are loyal. And it's so good. They're cautious and reliable and prepared. A big thing for 6s is they're driven by fear. And so they are worst case scenario thinkers, but we need those kind of people to kind of scope out what the possible problems are going to be and figure out solutions before we have a problem. Number 7 is the joyful person. This is sometimes called the enthusiast, and these people are super fun to be around. They're optimistic, enthusiastic, and imaginative. They are always looking for the next fun, exciting thing to do.
I used to say a lot of my girlfriends are actually 7s.
Oh, really?
Funny? Yeah. A lot of my clients that I work with are 3s, and a lot of my best friends, best gal pals, they're all 7s.
Oh, good. Well, they keep you light then. They keep you light, from getting bogged down in your work too much.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Number 8 is the powerful person. They are strong and direct, and they can be really great protectors. Sometimes you'll hear them called the challenger. And they basically tell it like it is. They don't like to be controlled. And so generally they will jump into a leadership role, and they take care of their people really well. And then number 9 is the peaceful person, or sometimes called the peacemaker. They are patient and they are diplomatic and calm. And they basically are just even. You can't
even keel.
Yeah, you cannot disturb them because they just are so peaceful. And so they're able, one really cool thing about the 9 is they can hear a bunch of opinions and a bunch of viewpoints and really see the value in all of them. And they are able to help people kind of come to an agreement because they can see all of these different viewpoints as equally valuable.
I love that. I love that. So with all these different types, how can this, help us in our lives or help us in their workplaces? Because obviously there's a lot of people listening who are in the workforce, right? This is a Your Career Story podcast about career. So how does this apply to our workplaces, or how does this apply just to life in general?
Well, I'm sure we have all had a boss or a team member or a coworker that you just have a really hard time jiving with, or you don't understand. And I think the Enneagram can be so valuable. Like I was talking about with the one relationship I have, where we just couldn't get on the same page about things just because we were viewing the world in a completely different way. So it's really great for leaders to know their own number, know the hangups that their number has, and really work towards health. And that's one great thing about the Enneagram. You don't just identify your number and go, well, I'm a 3. That's just how I am.
Right.
You really can work to integrate some strengths of the other types so that your type can be more balanced and you can be the most effective. So for leadership, this is great for self-awareness. I mean, there are studies that have shown that some of these soft skills like EQ is even becoming more important than IQ now.
Right.
So as a leader, being able to talk to your team in a way that they can understand and that you can have some compassion for your people and know how to come at them in the best way. And for teams, just being able to relate and know who has what skills and who has what weaknesses, to be able to build each other up and fill in those gaps for each other where somebody may be stronger or somebody may be weaker.
Yeah, I found that, to be true. I worked at a company, and I've actually, we're interviewing somebody that's talking about MBTI on the podcast, and kind of learning about the different personality typing systems that you had mentioned. But I love MBTI. I think it's helpful. But what I really love about the Enneagram is it's simple. There is not 20,000 different types. It is 1 through 9, and you kind of have an idea of what that is. So if, let's say you're a manager and I'm thinking about when I was on a sales team, and our sales leader had a ton of people on his team. He's not going to be able to remember everybody's 4 code, right?
No.
Like 1 through 9 makes it really simple to be like, okay, she's an achiever. This is how I can motivate her, or this is how I can speak to her. I think that's actually so much more effective and so much more valuable, because then I know the motivations, I know the fears, and I'm able to kind of translate that into, how do I work with this person better? This is what they're struggling with. Oh, they're in an unhealthy state. It's not that they're being just a jerk in the workplace.
Right. And if you understand what some of the negative behaviors can be, you can go to that person and go, hey, I noticed you're doing this. What's going on?
What's going on with that?
Is there something, in your home life, or,
Right.
Are you having an issue at work? Just knowing your people, I think, is so important. And also, I think it's good to realize about the Enneagram and any personality typing system, you are not your type. So your personality is something that forms when you're a kid, as a way to kind of be in the world and keep you safe. So you are Jenna, and your personality type developed as a way to present yourself to the world so that you know that you can be okay. And so when we see these types operating kind of in the most negative forms, we're like, that's not who that really is. So something's going on here. And so when we learn that, we can use the gifts that we've been given in our type, but also kind of let go of the things that really aren't working for us, that we can truly be ourselves. So we don't have to change and become somebody else. We can be a 3 and be a strong 3. But to let go of those behaviors that are not serving us well.
So let's talk about that a little bit, right? So there are some behaviors that me as a 3, I do. So what does that look like? We had talked a little bit before this kind of offline, but I'd love to hear a little bit how the faith component comes into that and kind of our I don't want to say weaknesses, I guess. And how does that kind of all intertwine?
Yeah. So the work that I've been doing is really trying to integrate the gospel and the Enneagram, because it's kind of on its own. It's kind of vaguely spiritual, but the Bible and Jesus has so much to say about our personalities and our hangups. So for 3s, we all have an idol that we want to hold on to. And so for 3s, our idol is, I am successful. And so we want to present this image of success because that means that we can be loved if we are successful. That is what our little hearts are telling us. And that's, of course, not true, but that's how we have kind of gone through the world. And so this idol, it promises admiration and applause and recognition. So it says, if you keep worshiping this, I am successful, you'll get these things. But the sacrifice that it requires is being mastered by your work and having to be as good as the last thing that you've done.
Yeah, it gets exhausting.
It does. It is. And it also you have to sacrifice real intimate relationships, because if you have to present this image of success, any failure under the surface, you can't let anybody know because that'll blow your image.
Yeah.
So you can't really be known. So
yeah, it's kind of funny. I even think back to when I was a young kid. Like that was a huge part of my storyline, right? Like I was the straight A overachiever. You know what I mean? All the things I wanted to be perceived as that. And I was, you're going to get a kick out of this. I was, how in high school you have like superlatives in the yearbook, most likely to whatever.
Oh yeah.
I was mad that I didn't get most likely to succeed. I mean, if that wasn't the most.
Me too. I know.
Like, why did I not get that? I was mad at the one that I got that it wasn't most likely to succeed.
I think I was upset about most likely to be on stage.
Mine was most likely
the one
to be
that
famous.
I was upset about.
I was most likely to be famous, and I was like, I don't want that one. I want most likely to succeed. Like that sounds way more impressive. And in my young high school brain, that's what I was thinking.
Yes. Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
So what we do, this idol creates this defense mechanism in us because what we're really trying to avoid is failure. So each type has an area of avoidance. So we're trying to avoid failure because that's the worst, because people won't love us if we're a failure. That's what we tell ourselves.
Right.
So we set up this defense mechanism that helps us avoid failure. So we kind of take on whatever role is successful in whatever realm we're in. So we are really good at reading a room and going, what is the image that needs to be presented here? And I'm just going to become that. Yeah. And honestly, a lot of times for me, it's not even a conscious thing. It's just like, here is how you act in this scenario.
Yeah.
Do you feel that way too as a 3?
Yeah, I feel like, I'm just thinking back to different situations where I mean, even today I was at a business meeting at our church. I was at our church and we were talking about something business related. And I was definitely positioning myself in that room, just being like, okay, how do I as you mentioned, subconsciously, like how do I measure the room, take stock of that and present myself in a specific way that's going to be, my opinion's going to be valued.
Yes, I know. So here is how Jesus can help us as threes. So he took our area of avoidance, of failure, and he redeemed that for us. So he lived a perfect life that we get to have credit for. So when he went to the cross, he took on all of our sin, all of our failure, and we get to put on his perfectly lived life. So we could take credit for all of the success that he had. And so because of that, in our actual life, we are free to fail because we are seen as a success in God's eyes.
I love that.
We don't have to impress him.
We don't have to impress him. And I think too, it's so easy to, if you really get down to it, because I feel like I've done some work around this and just being like, well, who am I really serving in a lot of the things that I'm doing? Am I really doing this for myself? Am I doing it to impress people, to impress my parents, to impress, people who I used to work with? Like, who am I doing to impress this for? And I think that once you strip it all down and you really get down to what Jesus did, I think it helps alleviate a lot of the pressure we put on ourselves as three. How have you seen it influence that perspective shift? How have you seen that influence your life?
Well, I mean, just constantly having to work for approval is just so hard. And I mean, I think really reflecting on the finished work of Christ. And when he's on the cross, he says, it is finished. So we don't have to earn it. We don't have to earn his love. We don't have to be impressive. We can just be. And that is such a difficult thing for threes, just to be with ourselves and know that all of these other things that we do that we are good at, and that is okay to be good at things. I think that is one struggle that the pendulum kind of swung the other direction for me of like, oh, well, I need to like press my gifts down. So that I'm not like stealing the spotlight from people. And right. So I had to come the other way and go, okay, when is God actually calling me up to use my gifts? So let me use them without fear of having to be impressive. So I just, I'm able to offer what I have. I don't have to overwork because I can just go, okay, he's done it. And
that is so hard.
What I have to bring is good enough.
Because I think it comes down to our approval of man.
Absolutely.
Right? Like it really doesn't, if I really think about it, I'm probably not looking for his approval. Because I'm like, oh yeah, I know, got that. I see that everywhere. I'm really looking for the approval of man, which is really what I don't need because it is only his approval and he'd already gave it. And so, you get stuck in that cycle of it because it is so easy to forget that. As threes, and I think just people in general in today's culture, the society that we live in, that's so work hungry, we're all workaholics. It is unnatural for us to have our phones, that's not a normal thing to have our phones have our email on it and constantly be connected to work, to have no rest. And it's exhausting. And so I totally hear you on that we don't have to think about ourselves as the only sole provider for stuff. So I definitely see that.
And when we're secure in our approval of Jesus, then we don't need that need in our hearts is taken care of approval of man.
Right.
So yeah.
That's awesome. Now, is there another type can you give us another example of an idol? If you can, kind of offhand of a type like idol.
Let's see. Who are you most interested in finding out about?
Oh, that's a great question. I actually, it's funny. I type all my people and then I also type past relationships and I'm like, oh, he was definitely whatever.
Yes. What ex do you want to talk about?
Yeah. And then I think about it and then I'm like, oh, now I understand why we didn't work out. Let's just go with, now you got me thinking down that track. LOL. Let's just go with 5.
Okay. All right. So 5s, their idol is that they are perceptive. So they really want to be the ones that know everything. So they are living in their head and they forget that they have feelings and a body. And so their idol of I am perceptive, it promises wisdom and this promise of being able to be detached. So they really want to live up in their head. And so the idol says, well, if you're very perceptive, you don't have to deal with the feelings. You don't have to deal with what's going on with you because you just can think about it. But what is sacrificed to this idol is, again, deep, intimate relationships. Because when you are so detached that you're not able to enter in with people. And their defense mechanism, so they are really afraid of emptiness. Their area of avoidance is emptiness. So they do not want to be depleted. So they feel like if they are giving too much of themselves, that they're going to run out. Yeah, it's really interesting. So running out of energy, or if they even share their knowledge, that they have to keep it for themselves. So their defense mechanism is isolation. And so they isolate themselves up in their head away from people. So they want to be physically away, but they also can just be mentally away, even if they're in a room full of people.
Makes so much sense.
Are you thinking of someone specific?
No, Modern.
So the way that Jesus talks about being empty, and that he came to redeem that. So in John 4, when he's talking to the woman at the well, he's telling her that he's the living water that is never going to run out. So we're free to give of ourselves because we can keep being filled up, because we can keep going back to that living water over and over and over, and it's never going to run dry.
Right.
So they don't have to be afraid of emptiness because they have all of that accessible to them in Jesus.
I love that. This is some good stuff, Lauren.
Thank you.
It's like honestly though, because I think ever since I learned about Enneagram, I think it's helped put words to stuff I already kind of had processed out, maybe with a counselor or with friends or something.
Yeah.
It helped bring language, is what I love about the Enneagram. It brings language, even if you aren't a believer. It's not just for Christians. I think it just gives words to the self-awareness of who you are and what you care about and what your fears are. And I'm like, oh yeah, that is why I'm doing that. Am I just being a 3 right now? or is this am I in a healthy state? So I'm also able to see, like, where am I emotionally? Am I healthy? Am I unhealthy? Is my reaction to that person just because we typically disagree on, we interact differently. And I think it's just helped me understand better, and understand what motivates people and what they care about and why they care about it.
Right.
Which is, in the efficiency realm, which us 3s really live in. When I tend to be like, okay, let's go. What's the deal? I have to kind of take that step back and, really just understand where the other person's coming from.
Right. And to know that other people value different things. I think that is what has helped me so much, because like you, I want to just go and achieve and get these tasks done.
Yeah.
And other people really genuinely need to slow down and think about things and feel and connect. And I'm like, well, why do we need to do that?
Yeah.
We just need to go do our stuff and get it done.
Yeah, I can even think of a situation. I'm thinking about a conversation I had with my mother recently, and she rightfully got a little frustrated with me on the phone because I was so like, let's get this. What's the problem? Like, if this is the problem, I can fix the problem. Let's move on with her. And she just wanted to be heard, and she wanted to, and that was really what it was. And it was just her type was different than mine, and I needed to be respectful of that in that moment, and I was not. And so I think even in those instances, you can see the nuances of it.
Well, and it's so helpful just to even be aware. So if you know what the type of the people who are closest to you are, just to be able to recognize those things that they may say or may do as, oh, you're reacting to me because I'm acting this way.
Right.
And it's so helpful for understanding how other people experience you.
Right.
I think we just don't think about how we are being perceived a whole lot. I think we know what we are wanting to present, but we don't know how that's coming off to other people sometimes.
Yeah.
And to just be aware of that and know that, when we're being extremely task oriented, people can feel dismissed.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny. So I had mentioned earlier, I have all my clients, I actually I have them take a test, but now I'm still going to send them to the book. But I have them do that in the beginning just so I know kind of how to interact with him. But isn't it funny? Most of my clients are threes. And
yeah, I've been thinking about that since you told me that before.
Yes,
do you have a theory on that?
I think it's because I market to people like myself. Like, I think my marketing and messaging is very what I care about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that generally speaking, if you're in a coaching type setting and the services that I offer, you're going to get people that are achievers, typically speaking. So I think that's part of it, is just the type of work that I'm in that would seek out those types of services. But I also think it is just some of my messaging. But I mean, 95% of my clients are that.
Really? That's interesting.
It is super interesting. I mean, I just pretty much know every single time I talk to somebody if they're going to be a 3 or not based off of the conversation. And I have them take the test and I'm always right. It's just the most interesting thing.
Yes. And isn't it funny? You can spot that in somebody else because you see it and you're like, oh,
yeah.
I know you.
Yeah.
I know what's happening
But
here.
then we can talk about it really, because I can relate to them so much easier too. And those are the people, I think that's also it, where I can relate to them, let's say in a discovery call. And if there are 3, I can understand what they're going through. And so I can provide insight on that. And I think they sign on because of that connection there. But it was interesting because I was working with somebody that is a 5. He's lovely. And, and I was explaining something and he was like, wait, I need you to break it down. And then I remembered in my brain, oh, he's a 5. And so we mapped out every single piece of the process. He wanted to know all the information. And it was fine because then I realized it about him. Right. Where before I probably would have never been, I wouldn't have been cognizant. I kind of was just been like, well, why does he need all that? You know, I mean, honestly, and because most of my clients are 3s. And so they don't need all that or they don't need
we can jump right to the conclusion.
Yeah. They're just like, okay, let me get going, you know, where he needed a little bit, and it wasn't a bad thing. It was just the way that he processed. And I verbalized that to him. I said, I'm sorry, I wasn't treating you on your person. I was explaining kind of the personality. He was like, yeah, that's exactly right. I've actually had quite a few clients that have said that they have made their spouse take it. And then they're like, it explains so much of our relationship. And I was like, yes, I am the new relationship coach as well. You're welcome.
Right, exactly. And I think that's something else to think about as an element of how we can be most effective in the workplace. Mm-hmm. Because if things are going on at home or in a dating relationship, that is going to really affect what goes on in the workplace. Even if you're able to kind of compartmentalize, if things aren't right, then you don't feel right. And so knowing what your spouse is or knowing what the person you're dating, or even in friendships, you know, with best friends, if things get kind of weird, you're like, what is this about? Yeah. You can kind of think, oh, I know why you're doing this. It's because of whatever. And then it gives a starting off point to conversation. So I think one thing important to remember about the Enneagram is we don't just stop at, oh, this is what you are, this is what I am. It's, okay, because of this, here's what's happening in our relationship. What can we do? How can I talk to you better? How can we relate in a way that you're understanding? Yeah. And, you know, and if you both know the language to talk, you can immediately start to recognize things. You know, my husband and I are both 3s, which is, I think is unusual. But it was really interesting for the first, we've been married for 14 years. For the first, probably 7 to 9 years, we were just like, yes, we're doing awesome. We are great. We are so great. Yeah. And then graciously, the Lord let us fail some, you know, just kind of in life or, you know, not getting the job that we wanted or long seasons of waiting. And so we were forced to kind of go, oh, we have to feel, because 3s tend to kind of, it's like we have a SIM card of feelings that we can take out and put over here so that we can get work done, because feelings slow you down. And so you need to be able to do things fast.
I've read that and I don't feel that's true for me.
Really?
Yeah, I don't, because I almost have to feel the feeling so I can move on and do my work sometimes. And maybe that's just been over the past year or two. that I felt that working for myself. But
then maybe you're doing better.
Maybe, because I've read that many times. I'm like, I can tear up at pretty much. I can do the feelings thing.
Well, I mean, maybe you're starting to access that forewing.
Maybe.
That really, really is very involved in their own feelings, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Because I think you told me that you were a 3 with a 2 wing,
that's
right?
What I thought that's what I was. I'm not positive.
Okay. Well, I mean, and so throughout our life, so real quick for people who don't know the Enneagram, wings are, everything is arranged in a circle with 9 at the top. Mm-hmm. So you have 2 wings. So you have your main number. So our main number is 3. Mm-hmm. And then the number on either side of your number. So for us, our wing options are 2 and 4. Mm-hmm. And so these wings are kind of like salt and pepper or like an accent color in decorating. So we're not always going to look like a 2 or always going to look like a 4. We'll still be a 3, but we have some of the aspects of each of these numbers kind of playing into our personality. Mm-hmm. And some teachers teach that you kind of start with one wing being pretty strong. And then as you grow, you start to be able to access that other wing to bring some balance. So if you've got the feelings going, then that's probably really good.
I hope so. Got all the feels, all the feels.
Let me ask you if you do this.
Yeah, tell me.
So 3s do something I like to call it pre-grieving.
Okay.
So if we think something bad is going to happen in the future, because we are very future-minded, we will kind of, if we're going to have some feelings about it, feel it on the front end. And then when it actually has happened, it's like we're good because we've already dealt with it.
Lauren, I can't even begin to tell you how relevant this is right now.
Oh, yeah?
So so I'm single, and I've had some conversations with the Lord about that. We've had multiple conversations, multiple screaming matches, for lack of a better phrase. And I'm kind of just, been frustrated. And I literally said to him the other day, I said, okay, if you want me to be single for the rest of my life, let me know now so I can just literally said, I want to grieve it and then move on with my life.
Yes.
So I guess I do that.
Yeah, we do. And like, when somebody dies, like I know that I will feel the anticipation of it and feel it before it happens. And so at the funeral, I can be the person running the errands, doing the things because I've already dealt with the feelings. Yes,
that's true too. I mean, I think back to my grandfather passing my freshman year of college, and I cried at the funeral because I like tear up or whatever, but I had to give a eulogy. So I was like, all right, I got to get it out before. And then it was the anticipation of, and then it was like released after it was all done.
Absolutely. Yep. Same deal.
Wow. I'm learning even more about myself. Look at that.
Oh, good.
Okay, cool. So what are some tactical things, and we might have talked about some of them already, but what are some tactical things that people can do to learn more about their Enneagram type or just to create change in their home or their work life?
All right. So yes, tests are okay for a starting point, and I think that's great. So you'll want to take your test, kind of see where you are. Or if you just want to read the book, the Road Back to You is the one that is probably the most accessible. If you get on Amazon and just put in Enneagram, you're going to get a lot of stuff that can get really deep and really confusing.
Yeah.
If this is your first one. So I think that one is a great one to start with. And then just learning to understand. I mean, if you wanted to start with just the people in your immediate life, so immediate family, closest friends, figure out what your coworkers or your team that you're leading is, you can kind of start to learn about the numbers that way gradually rather than feeling like you have to, learn all 9 types and understand all of them. So, I mean, that's kind of what I did. Like I started with this one relationship that was a struggle, and I was like, oh, well, let me learn all about that number. Right. And then I was like, oh, let me learn all about, my best friend and learn about it. So you can kind of get into it gradually. And it really is a process. And so many people will want to go, well, I'm just a 3. Here's what I am. But it doesn't serve you well unless you are kind of working through some of the things that you'll read about. So some of the negative behaviors. And you can go as deep as you want to go with the Enneagram. And So start there, read a book, learn your people in your immediate circle. And then I think it's important to start observing your own behavior.
Okay.
So we kind of notice what we're doing. If you wanted to, focus on one particular behavior that you know is not serving you well, just kind of pay attention for a week and go, how many times did I start to do this?
Right.
And what was behind that? Like, what made me want to do that? What was I feeling? What was going on in my body even?
Right.
And one great thing about the Enneagram is just all of the numbers are connected, and we all have some of everything in us. We just have one dominant number.
Right.
So if we're weak in an area, we can kind of bring up another number and go, when I'm feeling this way, when I'm reacting this way, I'm going to try to act more like this. I'm going to have a different response. So yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much.
You're so
this
welcome.
has been super helpful. And even just listening to you and kind of the different idols, I'm like, oh yeah, that's definitely true. Kind of the wrap-up question I always like to ask people, because I think this is super impactful. What is the best career or life advice that you've gotten?
I think, and I actually have gotten it recently, and it's kind of more life rather than career, but feeling, anticipating things in the future and thinking about that and trying to plan. One of my friends said, God goes before you. So he has already been where you are thinking about. And I think for us as threes, since we are so future focused, we're not alone out in the future when we're thinking about it.
Yeah.
God has already been there. He is there. He's waiting for us when we get there, and he's got it all figured out. And that we just need to walk in obedience towards where we think he's leading us, and he's always going to be there.
I love that. I need to be holding tight to that too. Awesome. So where's the number one place that people can connect with you if they want to learn more about what you do and Enneagram?
So they can either follow me on Instagram at Lauren Elkins Gray. I've usually got a series going there, whether it be, I had a video series on types of leadership. They can just kind of research and dig deep into all of the numbers if they kind of go back in my feed. But if they would like to talk about individual coaching or team building, where I would come in and work with a whole team for a day and everybody figure out their types and how we all interact as a team, you can go to my website, which is www.laurenelkinsgray.com.
And we'll put all that information in the show notes. Thank you, Lauren, so much for your time and for sharing your wisdom and giving us schooled on all things Enneagram. We loved having you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
All right. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for listening to Your Career Story podcast. I would love to get to meet you. And there are a couple of ways that we can connect in between episodes. First and foremost, I love my LinkedIn. Second is via Instagram. And third is over on my website. I actually have a special spot just for you full of fun, free resources. So all you have to do is go to www.jennaviviano.com/resources. Super simple, for a bunch of freebies that will help you boost your career. Hope to see you next week.